Good evening, everybody. Thank you all so much for being here. We hope you and your families are safe and well during this very challenging time. My name is Zoe Berg. I am the project director for Americans for Responsible Technology, part of a nonprofit organization based on Long Island, just outside of New York City. Americans for Responsible Technology, or ART for short, currently represents 130 plus organizations across 42 states that are working to protect communities from the deployment of powerful, never tested 5G small cell antennas. So before I tell you about tonight's call, I want to introduce to you the co-founder of 5G Crisis and Americans for Responsible Technology, Mr. Doug Wood.
Thank you, Zoe. And thank you to everybody here tonight who's on the call. We're happy to have you here. We get a lot of questions about who we are and how we came to form 5G Crisis and Americans for Responsible Technology. So I thought I'd just take a minute and explain exactly who we are and how we got here. Back in the year 2000, my wife, Patty, and I formed a nonprofit organization called Grassroots Environmental Education. Patty's the executive director of Grassroots. We have a small staff of about 5 people, incredible workers like Zoe, who help us do what we do. We do a lot of things at Grassroots, and our programs are really diverse. So with a technology and marketing background, the logical thing for us to do when we have a new project is to create a new website. And you can see some, but not all, of our programs on the screen in front of you. Many of you probably know the Baby Safe Project. We also created an online checklist for towns to see how green they really are. And we are the producers of a series of conferences and trade shows on sustainable energy. Patty and I have a weekly radio show on WBAI in New York called Green Street. And we work on environmental toxins in schools up at the top of the screen with a program called The Child Safe School. And Patty is the author of a book for parents of children with life-threatening illness that's called Helping to Heal. When we started to work on the 5G issue, we thought it might become quite political, and we were working on legislation. So our board of directors suggested that we form another nonprofit called Grassroots Communications. Grassroots Communications is a 501c4 nonprofit organization, and under that umbrella, we run both Americans for Responsible Technology and 5G Crisis. I should mention that Patty and I take no salary from any of our nonprofit work. We were fortunate to have a music business for many years that paid the bills and helped us put the kids through college and pay for the house. So that's a little bit about who we are and what we do. If you have more questions, I hope you will reach out to us and ask. And with that, I will turn it back over to Zoe.
Thank you very much, Doug. Thanks so much. So tonight we are excited to introduce to you all 7 activists that have established 5G action groups in California, Michigan, Connecticut, Florida, and Massachusetts. Each of our featured speakers will discuss how they became involved in the 5G awareness movement, the challenges they faced during their organizing efforts, and how they've overcome such challenges to achieve their most exciting successes to date. We will spend the first half hour of the call hearing from our featured speakers, the first hour of the call, hearing from each of our featured speakers. Each speaker will have 8 minutes to present. We will then go on to the 25-minute Q&A portion of the call. So please message any questions you have using the chat function on Zoom. And for those of you viewing this event on Facebook Live, please submit your questions in the comment field below the live recording. Throughout the call, we will compile a list of questions, and then I'll feed those questions to our speakers. This event will be recorded and immediately available on our Facebook page, Americans for Responsible Technology, under the Videos tab. So there are a few things that we're hoping you will take away from this call tonight. First, there is no one path to success. Different 5G action strategies may or may not work in different communities. Winning requires trial and error, flexibility, and perseverance. Second, you don't need a degree to build and grow an effective 5G grassroots movement in your community. You don't need a large pool of money or a lawyer or a certified nonprofit organization either. You can hit the ground running today using resources from our 5G Crisis Online Toolkit, which you can access at 5gcrisis.com/toolkit. We have sample 5G legislative codes and a sample letter to the editor, informational flyers on 5G and more, all free for you. Third, every success can lead to a bigger success. A local success, say in Easton, Connecticut, could translate to a success in Bend, Oregon, or Homer, Alaska. Every win can have a resounding impact across the country. We see this all the time. Every win inspires new people to join this important grassroots movement. It raises awareness about 5G risks and empowers local legislators to protect you and your family from 5G. Finally, the 5G fight is now or never. Telecom companies are quickly descending on communities across the country, looking to blanket entire neighborhoods with powerful, hazardous 4G, 5G wireless antennas. We must mobilize quickly, even if that just means writing a letter to the editor or sending your mayor our sample 5G legislative code. Anything and everything can make a difference here. This grassroots movement we are all building together is about drawing a line in the sand and telling telecom companies, you can't have it all. We live here. This is our neighborhood. This is our community. And enough is enough. So with that, I'll pass the baton on over to our first speaker of the evening, Julie Levine of 5G Free California. Okay, great.
So sorry. Thank you, Zoe. Thank you, Doug. And thank all of you for being here and participating. I really resonated with what you said, Zoe. And I just want to say, though, when we think about our communities and our streets, we can't just think about our immediate neighborhood. I think that what's going on in this country right now, whether it's COVID-19 or whether it's, what happened with George Floyd, speaks to the fact that we really are one country and one world. They're rolling this out all over the world. I'm part of a group called Stop 5G International that does the Global Day of Action. And what I've learned is that maybe we'll have more wins in more affluent communities, but we cannot forget or leave anybody behind in this fight because we're really all in it together. And the telecom, are being even harder on some of those other communities. So that will maybe, you'll see that as I go on in my talk because Boyle Heights has been an important symbol for us here in East LA, and we will be talking about that in a bit. So what I want to say is we started about 1.5 years ago, more or less. There was a group of 4 women. 4 women friends. 3 of us have even stayed friends, so it's a good beginning of a collaboration. And we just were brainstorming. I have microwave sickness. Actually, 3 out of the 4 women did, and now 4 out of those 4 women do. And we started saying, what can we do? Realizing that this 5G rollout was massive. And I think I even questioned if it was going to be, as decisive as what it really is going to be, especially with the satellites and the ground antennas and everything else. And so we said, we really need to do something. Now, my background is social work and community organizing, and I do have a background in, how do you get a group started? I want to say also that 5G Crisis was extremely helpful. We did use your tools. We put the tower things all around town and with my phone number, because I said, I believe that I was made for this fight, and I really was going to give it my all. We found a lot of people that way. We also have a responsive community newspaper, which was very important. And we have Pacifica Radio, KPFK here in Los Angeles, which all of us should support Pacifica because they're the only non-corporate funded radio and thus the only non-telecom funded media of any kind really that I know of, other than of course social media, which we also have to use heavily, but even that, as we know, is becoming censored. So we started small, and what we wanted to do was not just do it for ourselves. We live in a community in Topanga, California, where, I realize telecom must be hearing this call, and I'm concerned, but they know this. We are almost like a blackout zone. We don't have any cell phone towers in my immediate community. Therefore, as it turns out, we have a huge population of people like me who are already sick from technology and escaped to this community to get away from it. So we have an opportunity, but it's a slower rollout. So we haven't had some of the legislative experience that some of the other groups have had, but we've learned from the experiences of others. So as we started building, we were like, okay, just what you said, Zoe, we're not going to be able to do this unless we can do it for everybody. So we need to not only be concerned with our own rollout, but how can we best mobilize and collaborate and strengthen the national and the global movements. So we quickly established that we probably weren't going to get anywhere without lawsuits, especially given that we're up against a multi-trillion-dollar industry, right, a year off the sale of our data. So we started talking to lawyers very, very early on and finding those lawyers. And then I met Daphne Takover, and she's been very helpful to us. She really has. She's put us in touch with all kinds of people, experts, and helped us in identifying attorneys that could help. And so the other thing we felt we needed to do was help finance those lawsuits and help get funds to keep those going. Because again, if this was the way, we're very outcome-based, to stop the rollout, that we really needed to do it with these attorneys' help. And so we wanted not only to have the attorneys for ourselves, we wanted everybody to have access to the attorneys. And so that's why we did the call, which was Ask the Attorneys Call, with the 4 telecom attorneys on it. And I just want to say that that's our commitment at 5G Free California. We may not be like a Paul McGavin or Susan Clark, people who have tremendous technical expertise. We look to them for their expertise, but we have general knowledge. We can talk to people in all kinds of municipalities, and we do. We support almost every community in Los Angeles, a bunch south of here and quite a few to the north. We can give them basic pointers like, do they have liability insurance, and push for that, and how can you have the most protective ordinances, and gaps in service, and did they do everything correct in the permit. And we use the cease and desist letters that Susan Clark and Paul McGavin have provided. I get here, and I'm not an attorney, but I get between 20 and 50 calls or emails every single day from people asking for help. And so what I do is I give them Andrew Campanelli's documents for municipalities, or Mark Pollock's documents on liability insurance, anything, or Paul McGavin's stuff on cease and desist, anything that can help them in this fight, or the work that Children's Health Defense has done around the rollout in the schools. We work very closely with everyone that we can. Anyone who can work with us without backstabbing, which is a big problem in this movement. We need to build a positive movement. We need to understand that any attack on anyone is an attack on everyone. We all have personal styles, and we have personal liabilities. I have my own. Luckily, we live in a close-knit community, and we have a massive group of great volunteers. Andrea C., Marin Lutz, all these people that are working with us that help keep me on track. We work horizontally, and we work as a movement of leaders. So I want to say to other groups starting out, between what 5G Crisis has to offer, and I'm really happy to help coach you. We now have over 1,000 people on our list, and I think we're viable in this movement, but our goal is really not to compete with anybody. There's a group out there, California Issues Reform. I now believe it's moving to U.S. Issues Reform. It's going to be a very important part of the Josh Del Sol Summit in terms of the grassroots piece. We work very closely with Mandy Jacobs and her group, with Zen Caldecott and her group, we want to work with everyone. So, and we work with municipalities. We'll go out, whether it's to Sunland, to Hunga, wherever it is, Glendale, we'll go out, we'll talk to mayors, we'll talk to city councils. We want to be a part of a team. And we particularly want to be a part of the team where people are already organizing. We cannot do it for anyone because, as you know, this is a massive uphill battle, but we can do it with people, and that's really how we've operated. We've also built a close collaboration with Julian Gresser up in Santa Barbara. He's doing very important work around how he builds collaboration, the idea of negotiating, so important. How do we, it's the same thing as how do we build a movement? How do we encourage people? How do we motivate them? How do we make them feel important? How do we maximize their strengths? It's much more difficult when you're creating a patchwork quilt, primarily of volunteers with all kinds of levels of experience and technical skills. But we need to pull them all together and create a whole out of that. And that's not only true for us at 5G Free California, but it is true, for our entire movement. I've been really struck because I do participate in the Stop 5G Free, in the Top 5G International Group. I've been really noticing that all around the country, all around the world, all of these places are dealing with the same set of issues, enabling legislation that's put in place by the telecom at expense of the people. Everything that both of you, Doug and Zoe, were talking about is going on in continents and countries everywhere around the world. This is a global struggle, and so we have to understand it that way. And although our own laws are different, so clearly our judicial paths may be somewhat different, we all need to find ways to work together because it affects not only us, as you know, but wildlife and, all animals and all living things. And it truly is the future of our planet. We won't be able to live in it. Now, I don't know how I'm doing on time. Okay, perfect. So I want to wrap with talking about the work we're doing in Boyle Heights. And I'd like to start by just putting up some pictures that I took this morning. I was out there with Brenda Martinez, who's a local organizer. Boyle Heights is a very vibrant community in East LA. And as you see from this picture, they are fighting a cell tower, a large cell tower of 4G, but it will of course be 5G enabled. It's all part of the infrastructure in the middle of their community garden. And this is a very vibrant group. Very vibrant group of people who it's the meeting place, it's the hub of their community. They grow healthy food, and it's right next to their children's preschool, and there are 7 schools within 500 feet of this site. So we feel it's an important example. It's kind of a last holdout. It's surrounded by cell phone towers, but they're saying not here, not in our backyard. They planned, in fact, they've already started construction. Here's the construction that's already begun. You can see the piping and stuff that's been put in place. That is actually going to be in the middle of the garden. That's just the piping. That's going to go all the way in, and the clock face. They're saying it's going to be beautiful. We're going to create a clock tower, and they're like, "Yeah, your clock tower with your radiating cell tower is going to radiate our food and our children and us. We want nothing to do with us. We will not go there, and we are saying no till the end." So we are going to have for the Global Day of Action, which is this Saturday. We're going to have a press conference there. We're calling out our elected officials. I believe right now we have a confirmation from Kevin De Leon, City Council-elect, and from Jimmy Gomez, City Council, a couple of others, hopefully. But we also have media. So we've been very helpful with Pacifica. We have KPFK. Brenda and I have been doing shows right and left, KPFK shows. We did an interview this morning on Russia TV, not RT, but another Russia TV, and Vice, which has been horrible, by the way, to our movement. But Vice is going to be there Saturday, a different wing, and they promised to give us objective coverage. So I'm just going to wrap this. We just did this video, and it's going to be, there's a couple of typos, but I think it'll give you a feeling. And I just want to say, let's work together in the spirit of love and Boyle Heights, in the spirit of all of us. So Ben, if you can just put that out there. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Julie, for your presentation. Really appreciate it. You guys are doing fabulous work out in California, and we're excited to continue to help you fight the good fight. All right.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Julie. All right, so now we're going on to Pam Wallace, and Pam is with Safe Tech Forward in Michigan. Pam, are you with us?
Thank you so much, Zoe and Doug, and everybody. Thank you for coming tonight. I direct Safe Tech Forward. I'm just outside of Detroit, Michigan. And I did want to say that in Detroit, this conversation is a very difficult one to have, because we have a community and legislators and an automotive industry that's actually very vested in 5G technology because they have tied it to autonomous vehicles. We do know from experts that that's not the case and that it's not 5G dependent, but one of the things that we've wrestled with is this being a particularly difficult time or place to have the conversation. What I want to say to people just coming on is you are coming on at a very wonderful time to be coming on to this conversation. Years ago when we started, I started Safe Tech Forward in 2011. I started with the analog choice because we were dealing with the rollout of smart meters, and we were looking at, smart meters that give RF off and they were going to be on every home. So we were at a crossroad with our infrastructure. But at that time, it was very difficult to get anybody to listen to this, whether you wanted an article in a newspaper, even a local newspaper, any kind of news coverage, anything was almost impossible to get. And actually, telecom got involved at very granular levels and put a stop to any kind of public awareness campaigns. We had a television show here in Detroit that features a physician, and there were going to be some conversation on 5G, and the telecommunications company found out and actually shut down the show last minute. So those were the kind of dynamics we were dealing with when we first started in this. And I think what we became very clear on was that we needed to establish a foundation. At the time that we started, there were very few people that knew anything about smart meters. They knew very little about safe technology, some of the issues and some of the bioactive issues with radio frequency radiation. So what I do at Safe Tech Forward, I have a partner named Dee Hilbert, who's an RN. I work in very close collaboration with Janine Deal, who's here from Michigan Safe Technology, and all of the other safe tech groups in Michigan. We have several, and we do work independently, but we work very heavily collaboratively. We're all over the state, and we're actually starting an umbrella organization, a coalition, because we've reached a time where we think this would be a really good idea. So my work has been largely, my background is public education, elementary education, and my work has largely been, I work with other advocates, I work with some of the leading tech professionals, scientific medical professionals, and legal professionals to educate on the bioactivity of RF. And so that people are quite aware of the bioeffects on human and environmental life. And so we work with legislators, we work with professional communities, we work with the general public. I don't keep a website, so I do things a little bit differently, and I don't keep a Facebook page, largely because those efforts are being done beautifully by many others in this movement, and because time is precious and resource is precious in this, and this can take a lot of time when you're working at the level that I am. So I don't want to duplicate efforts. So initially, I'm going to start off with my PowerPoint. So essentially, we did start with the analog choice here. And analog choice was, again, the first piece that Michigan took on. We did have a representative in the House that was very willing to work with the advocates on this. Anyway, what we ended up doing was starting a public campaign. Again, we knew that we needed to get foundational information out there, and that foundational information needed to happen to the general public, and it needed to happen to the state legislature. So we did a number of different educational campaigns. We worked in very close collaboration with Tom McMillan, who was our representative, and he was willing to take on the safe tech issue. Some of the bigger things that we accomplished is we did a Lansing Slam event, which these will just give you some ideas of things that you can do. We bussed about 300 people up to the state capitol, and we actually pulled our senators and our state representatives out of meetings and brought them out into the lobby of the state capitol to discuss our thinking and the facts surrounding safe technology. We also, through that effort, we had about 300 people come up to an oversight committee hearing where we were able to get, again, about 300 people. We had about 100 testimonies where it was led by Tom McMillan, and he was willing, he wanted this to go into the public record, which is, again, one of those foundational pieces that we felt that we needed to start establishing public record and legal record. We had about 75 people testify. We presented with about 100 letters from people who are electrosensitive, doctors' physician letters. So again, a lot of the work was just building the foundation in this conversation. So when things started to heat up with 5G here, we were starting to see legislation being introduced in the state legislature here. Again, that's when I began working very closely with Janine and the other safe tech groups. And we knew that this message about RF safety was not just going to come from anyone. The legislators, our communities that we had approached, they had heard the community concern, but at this point, they needed to be hearing from the experts. So a large portion of our foundational work was to bring in the experts to discuss the dangers of 5G and RF at our hearings. So we've had a couple of hearings. We flew in Dr. Sharon Goldberg. You guys may have seen her clip. It's been in a number of different publications and presentations and even movies. And this is what we wanted. We wanted to get a baseline that everyone in the country could use to model in other states. Again, video work that could be used. We brought in Professor Paul Haru. Daphna Kochover has done a number of presentations here. She presented before the legislature, as did Frank Clegg. So for this was again the foundational work that we wanted to build off of, and we knew that those expert voices were going to be critical for the long term and the validity of this discussion. Another foundational piece we did for more of the community work that we've done is my husband Andy and I went and we've gotten to know Frank Clegg, and we did the Frank Clegg video that you're seeing on screen here. A little bit of housekeeping. If you guys share this video or if you see it shared and it's not from Michigan Safe Technology, if you could be sure to post it from Michigan Safe Technology. That's where we posted it for the purpose of, we have a lot of other resources there for new people, and this is a great foundational video for people. It's kind of Safe Tech 101. So we want new people to have basically access to very valid and professional information about RF and 5G. And so that's on the Michigan Safe Technology website. Also, Michigan Safe Technology is devoted just to safe technology, and some of the other places that have taken the video and aired it have other issues involved that some people may not, want to hear about in terms of understanding 5G. It's kind of 5G plus. So the majority of our work is education. We do community education. I do presentations. We do presentations. I do a great deal of work with municipalities and schools. We do very granular work. We do presentations, but we also form working groups and relationships sometimes that go on for a number of years that help people to make very gradual steps towards safe tech. We have a couple of schools that have changed their cell phone policies. What we're really strong in and what we need to continue is the relationships. What I tell people is, this isn't a data drop. This isn't like a one-time letter to a school or to a municipality, because when they write you back, the question is, what's next? What are you going to say? What are you going to do? How are you going to help guide these entities through this process? It's a very, very serious discussion with them. For schools, you're talking about multi-million-dollar investment in infrastructures as well as municipalities. It is not something that we're going to take to their door and have them say, or we say, this is very dangerous. There's a lot of facts that I want to share. They're not going to say, thank you so much, and then run with it and do the right thing. One of the reasons that we stay with it is because if we alert them to the issue, but we don't guide them to the experts, and our goal is always to get them to the experts, then they start to fill in the blanks themselves. Okay, so they're the ones that are then telling their stories, and they're reaching out to their experts who largely don't know anything about this. So we work very hard to get a rapport with the municipalities, the schools, and the community so that we're a trusted, valid voice on this issue. And we also make it very clear that we are sharing information from the world's leading RF experts. Most of us do not have a technical background or a radio frequency radiation background or a medical background. And so we are sharing their information versus our own. Some of the educational work that we do when small cells go into communities, we actually flyer within line of sight homes or businesses. And so what we do is we've called it a public health notification. which doesn't have any other issues attached to it other than we're letting you know that there's a public health issue in near your home or your business. So we show people what kind of small cell is nearby. We just have information about what radio frequency radiation does, and then we just give them access to safe tech groups and some professional organizations to get more information. We don't tell them to call their senator. We don't try to rally them in any way, because from my experience educating the mainstream, they will receive information that's given to them that they can look into, but especially in today's political climate, not everybody wants to be directed on the next step. So we have those pieces where we do that directive, but for just a general mainstream educational piece, we just educate them on RF. Oops, my thing went out again. Let's see.
That's all right. You need to wrap up. Thanks.
Okay, so I think what I want to say, the most important things I think we do here are educational teams. And we work together with people from all over the state. We help coach for people to have more of a professional voice. We have people who have more of an advocacy voice in this. The important piece for us is to really do our best to get this message out to the mainstream with mainstream messaging and sensibilities. Again, creating a very valid, professional voice so that people are easily able to embrace this, take this information in, take the next steps in finding more about it, and seeing if we can evoke change by getting it out again on a broader scale, and also working with our communities that we know that are already receptive, that we've been able to engage thus far. So this is largely the work that we do here. I'm happy to consult with anyone. I do a lot of coaching. I'm happy to share a little bit more fully at another time, but this just gives you a little bit of a sense of what we're doing in Michigan. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Pam. Thank you for the work that you're doing. And I can see people are itching to get some of those resources that you put up on the screen there. So at the end, I have a slide with everyone's contact information so you can reach out to the speakers that you've heard. All righty, off to Janine. Janine is also from Michigan, and she is Michigan for Safe Technology. Janine, are you with us?
I am here. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, and I'm gonna do screen share. Great, thank you. I am Janine Deal, founder of Michigan for Safe Technology. In 2015, I began advocating for utility meter choice legislation after a horrible reaction to transmitting natural gas meters. 2 of our dogs actually had horrible reactions too. It was a few years later, I was helping Daphne Talkover and Kevin Modis in their national effort to stop 5G when I found the 5G bills here in Michigan. And that's when I began the 5G, the pushback for 5G here. Kevin Modis, I was working directly with him at that point in time, and he helped me create a flyer. And Providence was on my side. It just so happened like 3 days after I found the 5G bill here in Michigan, there was a smart meter hearing at the Michigan Public Service Commission, which I was already planning on attending. So I brought my flyer, and I wanted to be the first person to the meeting, which I was, and Senator Patrick Colbeck was the second person to the meeting. So I showed him my flyer, and he read it, and after he read it, he hung his head. And he says to me, and I think it was Julie that mentioned, you know, we're working upstream. Well, that's what Senator Colbeck said to me. He goes, you know, you're swimming upstream on this, Janine. And I said, yeah, I know. But it's like my loved one is upstream and I know that they're drowning. What am I supposed to do? I have to do something. If I don't at least try, I will always know that I never tried. And so I will try, you know. And he nodded in agreement, and he said he would mention it in caucus that day. And then he told me, well, then later, actually, he went on to give a speech in front of Michigan Senate on March 15th in opposition to the 5G bills here in Michigan. And a few days after this speech, Daphne, who I'd been working with, she called me in tears of joy. and she wanted to come to Michigan. She wanted to meet this senator. She had never been to Michigan before. I'd never met her in person, but had talked to her a lot on the phone. And, you know, so she wanted to meet all of us in Michigan and meet this senator, and she asked if I could help arrange her trip here, which I did. And thank you to Pam Wallace, Take That Forward, who hosted Daphna and continues to host Daphna whenever she comes to Michigan. And that just, you know, turned out perfectly. So Daphna, she came in, I think it was April, and she stayed actually several months. And like in California, she gave lectures throughout the state. Actually, mostly it was Lower Michigan, and that really helped us grow our group, our different groups. And then, despite our best efforts, Pam went over this, you know, that we brought in some of the world's leading experts in the opposition to all this radio frequency radiation. Despite our best efforts, Michigan's 5G streamlining bill passed the House. It had already gone through the Senate, and it passed the House with about a 2/3 vote in favor of it, which meant it was 1/3 in opposition. And actually that was precedent setting. No other state in the nation had gotten 1/3 of their House to vote in opposition to this, to, you know, the 5G bill, which actually that was kind of a springboard for my lobbying efforts. That session ended. There were new representatives for the 2018-19, or I'm sorry, 2019-20 session, and the ones that were reelected, those were the ones that were reelected and had voted in opposition to the 5G bill. Those were the ones that I started, you know, I would make appointments with, we would sit down, and I would always have a handout. I would, you know, always have a letter to leave them. I would summarize my letter so that my speech was a little bit more off the cuff, but I learned this from Cece, that I always held up information, you know, like this is what I'm talking about, and then leave it with them. And I think the representatives really appreciated that. Let's see. Yeah, we had, another thing, yes, sometimes the representatives weren't available. So I always had to be flexible. If they offered, you know, for me to see the chief of staff or another staff member, I looked at it as an opportunity. I never knew when or if I'd be able to, you know, have a meeting in that office again. So I always took that as an opportunity. And I learned early on, there were a couple of representatives that, you know, I'd walk into their office and they'd be like, I have 5 minutes, I have 10 minutes. What is it you're wanting? So I developed a very clear and concise ask. You know, I wanted to repeal the 5G bill here in Michigan, and I wanted to see a moratorium placed on wireless expansion until safety was assessed. And actually, you know, a couple of representatives that were shocked that there was no, you know, safety assessment done on this massive 5G rollout. I did garner some support for a repeal and moratorium, not enough for, you know, to pass a bill for repeal and moratorium. And this all happened, you know, right before the lockdown happened here in Michigan. And I did get one representative that said she would, she wanted verbiage for a resolution. And I also wanted to mention that I've done a few public presentations as well, and they're actually very rewarding, more so rewarding than lobbying efforts, because when you give a public presentation, usually it's people that come to the presentation that want to learn more, that are already somewhat on board or on the fence, and we have wonderful conversations there. So if I were to do this all over again, I would mix up the presentations with, you know, public presentations with the lobbying efforts, and then I would get more people. And I think that's another important thing too, is that it was myself and usually one other person, John Deal, who I think is on the call, and actually we're not related. He spells his name D-I-E-A-H-L. And so that's kind of a a funny thing when we walk into representatives' offices. And it's like, I'm Janine Deal and this is John Deal, and we're not related, but we're the Deal team. You know? So that Providence was on our side for that. And so, yeah, and also another thing that we got here in Michigan was analog meter choice legislation was reintroduced in March of this year. So, you know, and that was actually from the efforts of a safe tech advocate who is in northern Michigan and who is very good friends with a woman named Jamie Chimner, who has not had electricity for, I think, 3 or 4 years now, because the digital meter and the, you know, the smart meter is hard on her health. So, and I think that's about it. I was probably used less time than I need.
No, you were perfect. You were perfect, Janine. Thank you so much. Thank you for your presentation, for your words, and for all of the work that you and Pam and the rest of the team are doing in Michigan. And that's, you know, really some inspiring stories there. So now we're gonna move on over a little further east. We're going to Connecticut to Miss Pasca Ann. Pasca, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thanks so much, Pasca.
Like last time we spoke, first of all, thank you, Doug and Zoe and everyone here. I'm like the new activist. I'm like the reluctant activist. I didn't really have an organization background like Julie. I don't have that education background like Pam. And Janine's lobbying skills, I need to mimic and copy and steal as much as I can from all of these people, because I woke up to this issue last June. Actually, beforehand, I knew about EMF. I knew about that microwave radiation. I knew about the causes of health issues and concerns. When I saw a small little antenna, local in town where my son and my daughter-in-law live, and soon to have been and they were expecting a grandchild for me, a child for them. I got really alarmed. And then our government, literally last June, passed a bill unanimously. We just had one rep out of 184 reps approve an acceleration 5G bill. And everyone all along for the last year and a half, when I would speak to my local reps and my local senator, they're like, no, don't worry, Connecticut's never going to get it. No, don't worry, because we've got too much rural, it's not going to happen. Well, it did happen in June. And so a small tribe of us, a small group of us, Dan's not here, he's on vacation with his family, but really a small group right here in Easton, we just said, we got to do something. So talk about ground zero and grassroots. Right here in our little town of Easton, which is about a little over 7,000 people, we're mostly farms. We have no commercial really, other than a small deli and a small country store and a mail office that we all like, because that's where we all go to get our mail back and forth. We just decided that we had to do something. So what did we do? We had no money. We had no 501c organization. We had no website. And at the time, we didn't even have any Facebook groups. So when this bill got passed, a couple of us just huddled, quick messaging, like, oh my God, I can't believe we passed this bill without even the public really knowing about it. So we started making phone calls. We literally I had no legislative experience. I've never worked on crafting a bill or concept bill. I'm learning a lot, I have to tell you. In the last year since we started, I've learned so much that I might have to run for office in a few years. If anyone would vote for me. But literally, back to this bill, it got passed. Out of 187 reps and senators, only one voted against it. So talk about unanimous. Talk about it, the timing of it. It was 1 minute left in the legislative session. This got crammed down our throats in Connecticut. And then when I did call the reps and say, just help me understand, how's this possible? How is the public not aware of something that's going to be statewide, impacting everything in our lives, our health, our babies, our unborn, our preborn, our birds and our bees? And they were like, well, because it's 5, what are you talking about? It's not a problem. It's just 5 gigabytes of extra storage. I'm like, no, it's not 5 gigabytes. Are you do you not know what you signed? And literally, I'm not exaggerating. And please, if anyone's on this call that thinks that I'm exaggerating, call some of these reps, because they literally did not realize what they were signing as far as what the harm was, what the risk was, what the actual studies were. So we teamed up with the one rep, and I'm so proud to have met this man. He's out of Stanford. He's not even focused on Easton because he's focused on Stanford. We teamed up with him and we really started brainstorming. As a new activist, I really didn't know, how do you move forward something? How do you change something that's been made law? My attitude is just rip up the damn thing and let's get on with it because it's bad. It's a bad law. You can't execute a bad law. So he helped us strategize. We started making phone calls and we started galvanizing the group. The only thing we created, because I don't have a website, is a Facebook group. Our Facebook group went from like 4 or 5 people. We are now like almost 1,300 strong. We've galvanized across the state. I went online, I found 5G Crisis, which I was very, very happy to find. I found one woman in Brookfield who had signed up her name on 5G Crisis. I called her up and I said, how can I help you? I want to help you, but I'm here in this county and you're in that county and we're kind of spread out. And I said, you handle that county and I'll handle my Easton. That's how we kind of broke it up, hoping that other people would sign up and handle other parts of our county because we're a pretty big state. We have like over 186 towns and stuff. So one of the things David Michelle came up with as our rep in Stanford, who was for this, said, back to education. We need to educate our legislators. And that's how we got back in touch with Doug and Patty, and we created a forum in Stanford. We had over 165 people attend, and it was a great, great organization because we had Doug and Patty, we had Dr. Deborah Davis, and we had Frank Clegg that you just heard about from Microsoft. That got so much media press and attention that people started waking up and saying, you're right, we've got a lot of questions on this. However, our legislators didn't have a lot of answers on this. So we had started at the top. Let's get the federal, let's get Blumenthal. Blumenthal had made a great congressional hearing where he said there were no studies. That's the problem. He said the word no studies. He should have said, we have thousands of studies. We have thousands of studies that show harm. That's what he should have said. And that's what he should have had the committee say. Not to tell the boss what to say, but I mean, he's bigger than I am, but I'm just the little grandmother here in Easton. But that was kind of like set us on fire in a way because it said, oh, there are no studies. So let's just go put it in anyway and we'll find out. We actually had a legislator who runs the Energy and Tech Committee that approved this, that pushed this through. He basically said, you know what, we'll probably find out some harm in about 30 years. No, it's not going to take 30 years. It's probably going to take 6 months or 4 months or less because it's like 200 times faster than what we have today. So do you think that's going to be harm? That's going to be, you know, taking 30 years? So we really embarked on a get the national, didn't show any progress. Get our state reps, wasn't showing any progress. And then we finally decided that we really need to just hit our local towns. And that's my solution, I think, going forward. And what we've learned is waiting for a legislative cycle. Our next legislative cycle doesn't come till next year again, January. We're not gonna have any concept bills going forward. We tried to get one in February, and guess what? It got kiboshed. We wanted a concept bill very similar to New Hampshire. We're gonna steal all these ideas. New Hampshire has a great bill, and hopefully you'll hear about it, but it didn't get through. So locally, what we did in Easton starting last year, I made my very first public statement. I had never, ever made a public statement in front of our town meeting. Really, I mean, I've lived in this town almost 20 years, and I literally never went to a town meeting and made a statement. And so using the resources from 5G Crisis, using the resources from Susan Clark and Daphne, Safe Technology, I mean, I just stole what I can. Here's what I stole. I stole signs like this one. I put them all over town. I put them in my town hall. I stole books from Grassroots. Well, I bought them, I didn't steal them. Assets like this, all right? I mailed them to every one of the committee heads for energy and tech, for environment and public health, a personalized paper letter, not an email, okay, that I mailed these handouts to them. Doug had actually helped me craft a letter to the to the siting council. I mailed all those people a letter saying there is clear evidence of harm. You need to stop. I'm just a grandmother. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a paralegal. I'm nothing. We did that. I also did in Easton my very first, so I'm all about first in the last 12 months. Didn't think about it that way, but my first public viewing of a movie in town. So I asked the library, can we show Generation Zapped? Again, flyers everywhere in our town for Generation Zap. It was emailed out from our library database. And so we had a small showing, but it wasn't just the people that came to that night that I think made a difference, was people got it in their email from the library that we were doing this. And people would then probably rent the movie, download the movie, or buy the DVD. So it was really a very stealth effort, because some of the things that we then did is when I made that public statement to our local town, literally 2 minutes, we also gave them a sample of a resolution, because 5G Crisis has these templates. So I went over there, stole it with my partners in crime in town. And we gave them a sample, like, listen, you don't have to start with a blank piece of paper, because that's really hard. You know what I mean? Because when you're not a lawyer, you're not an ordinance person, you're not a planning person, how do you pull all that together, right? So we literally gave them a sample and said, listen, we should really discuss this. Maybe 90% of this is good, maybe 80%, maybe 100, but let's discuss putting a stop for now, because the evidence is very clear. And until we could show that our bees, because we have farms, until we could show our bees and our children and our humans are not going to be harmed, we should put a stop. So they didn't do anything in October. We kept meeting with them, via the email and the phone. In December, I actually served with my partner in crime, I'll call him that, in our town here, the other 5G guy. We served him a cease and desist letter that Susan helped us craft and make it relevant for our situation. And I think that really, to be honest with you, I think that brought it home for them, because I think they realized now there was a legal issue. There's a liability issue. Okay, and we really tried to stress to my town, listen, if you're going to control if I could build a shed or an addition to my house, don't you think you should control what's going on near our properties and on our streets and the power? So I think that really, really helped. In addition, you have to get your various little groups in town involved, the conservation group, the parents. I think the parents that saw a video that I had made of a cell tower that's across from the soccer field that was put in 2 years ago. It had been opposed for many, many years. And then all of a sudden it was approved on public land. And I took my little new Cornet meter, beep, 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 beep. That was beeping in the parking lot before I even got to the soccer field. And I made a video and I posted it in our group. And I asked parents in the group, because I'm not, my children are grown up. There's nobody in the middle school or the elementary school. And so I had other parents share that video. And then as parents realized, like, oh my gosh, that tower is actually alive, because some of them heard that it was not alive, that it was live and radiating. And I said, listen, if your kid is in that soccer field and sweating, their whole body is an antenna resonating and absorbing that radiation. We've got to do something about this. And it was parents. So that's why I cannot take any credit for what we did in Easton. It's, you have to be a bulldog and you have to take no, you cannot take no as an answer. When I kept hearing from our legislators, oh, Pasca, you can't do anything about this. I mean, that's it, you can't. And I'm like, why? Well, it's preempted. The FCC has preempted us. Look up that word. First of all, the federal government can never control what a state does. That is one very simple, you don't even have to be a lawyer to know that. Look at today what's happening. Trump cannot control what the governors are deciding to do for the most part, right? So,
hey, Pasca?
What? I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you. We're running a little bit behind schedule.
Okay, so let me just end it with this. Try to find these credible websites that have been noted here today, and don't give up. You don't have to have $1 million. I still don't have a lawyer. I have a lawyer that's volunteered to help us, but right now he's kind of on a different priority. But you can individually get together with a couple of other like-minded individuals and make a change and demand that your town takes the actions, because they took an oath of office to protect people and property. Thank you. Thank you so much for having us, Doug.
Thank you so much, Pasca. Thank you, thank you. We really appreciate it. And, you know, it's really great to hear that you were able to have that big win in Easton, and we're really rooting for you. And it definitely has an impact all across the country because it empowers other folks to want to do the same. So now we're going to go on to, we're going to the South now. We're going to Florida. It's beautiful there right now, I'm sure. So Jason and Raymer of Floridians for Safe Technology, a relatively new group. Are you guys with us?
I'm here.
Okie dokie, in the clouds, still there.
I'm in the clouds.
Okay, perfect. Very good. All right, Jason, it's all yours.
You bet. So I'm splitting my time with Raymer, so I'm going to be a little bit shorter than the other presenters. And I just have a very simple story to tell. I became aware of these issues a couple years ago, and I did a deep dive into studying the issues. And for a time, I worked with Kevin Modis on a couple websites to help him. And but I began to wonder who's in my neighborhood that I should be talking to, and that I could be connecting. And you know, how can we grow an organization in Florida to address these issues? Because I literally did not know. So I began reaching out, asking questions, you know, Googling, making phone calls, and so forth. And so now we have a small network of activists all across the state of Florida, communicating with each other on conference calls. And my goal has been to connect activists so that we can all coordinate our activities. So luckily, we found some great people up in Jacksonville. That's Raymer, who she'll speak next. John Heron in Pensacola, Marilyn Martin down in Sarasota, and some younger activists in Miami. So everybody has sort of a different background, different skill set, but so all I want to say is this is an organically growing movement, and I want to really encourage people to build their networks. We've been able to put together a website just recently. So here we are, Floridians for Safer Technology. And so if anyone's listening tonight who is in Florida, go right here to floridiansforsafertech.org and sign right up, and we'll be in touch with you. And, you know, in Florida, there's a bunch of things going on. We've got Stop 5G Florida. There's the younger activists down in Miami. We got 5G Jacksonville right here. We've got a 5G news website that was built by one of the activists up in Palm Beach, I think. And we've got this Stop 5G Facebook group going on here. So I'm hoping that, you know, we can keep growing the network, building it in small groups, county by county, then town by town, and go from there. So that's, oh, and one last note, as people are becoming aware of these issues, people pop up all over the place. And all of a sudden, one day you open up your computer and you discover you have an activist who came out of nowhere in some place like Collier County.
Because according to thousands of scientists, the millimeter wave radio frequencies associated with 5G have been causally related to alteration of heart rhythm, altered gene expression, altered metabolism, altered stem cell development, cancer, cardiovascular disease, cognitive impairment, DNA damage, impacts on general well-being, increase in free radicals, learning and memory deficits, particularly in the young, impaired sperm function and quality, miscarriage, neurological damage, obesity, diabetes, oxidative stress. And that piece of that one handout that I gave you is the tip of an informational.
So there it is. There's a attorney, James Boatman, who came out of nowhere through his communication with one of our activists up in Pensacola, put together a whole presentation to present to the County Board of Commissioners to propose a oversight board on the installation of 5G technology in this county. So, you know, when you see activists pop up, you give them a call, you connect, and you bring them into the fold, and you keep on rolling. So now I'm just going to turn it over to Raymer.
Great. Thank you so much, Jason.
Welcome.
Hi, this is Raymer Rachels. I'm here from Jacksonville, Florida, and I'm one of the founders of Stop 5G Jax on Facebook. I also started learning about 5G really this time last year with the 5G Summit. And why I did initially is I just shared the link with several like-minded friends, and then several of us got together one afternoon at my house and we just sort of brainstormed, okay, what are we going to do? And we naively thought, oh, well, we'll just stop it. Like, right? We'll just stop it. And we had no idea at that time how complicated the subject was, how much money was behind it, or how involved we would get in local politics. There are many speakers that have lots more experience in this, or they've been doing this for years and years, and we're relatively new. So we started with just kind of this scattershot approach because we didn't know what was going to work and what wasn't going to work. So I'm going to just share some of the things that we did, which I feel like helped us gain traction. One of the first things we did is we started a Facebook group, and we did it with members where we asked for people to join as a member. And the reason for that was because then we could actually count the number of people that were involved, which gave us leverage when we were going in front of city council. So we started off, it was 100 members, then it was 300, then 500, and now we're up to almost 1,200 members. And when you can say that, oh, well, we actually have 1,200 members, it carries a little bit more weight. You should find out if anything is happening in your local community regarding 5G. If it hasn't started yet, that's fantastic. Don't waste any time. Get moving right away. If it has started, you can still do the same thing, which is in either case, you need to educate your community and your local representatives, because so many people have no idea what this is all about. I would suggest trying to schedule a meeting with your city council person or state representative as soon as possible to express your concerns. And that may also sound a little bit intimidating because you may not feel like you know enough about this to really go speak to the representatives. But the reality is you don't have to be an expert. And what we used often on the Environmental Health Trust website, there's a 5G fact sheet, which is just a really basic 2-pager. It has a lot of references to studies, so you can take the deep dive going from there if you want to, but it's just kind of a baseline, simple, because with all this information, it's an overwhelming amount, and you kind of think, well, where do I even start? So that was what we did, is the 5G fact sheet from ehtrust.org, and we would share that and sort of use that as our entree, whether it was to city council or whether it was an effort with publicity for letters to the newspaper or local radio, etc. Another big thing that happened for us was we learned with almost no time that there was going to be a vote in our city council regarding a local ordinance that had been written by Verizon. And we heard about it and we scrambled. Like, I think we probably had less than 24 hours, but we scrambled and we heard about this website called actionnetwork.org. And we were able to sign up. It was you can pre-populate it with the names, addresses, or excuse me, email addresses and phone numbers of all the people on your local city council. And then you can share a link, viral link, to any of your friends, any of your contacts, etc. And basically you've written an action item for your city council people. So our action item on the day of the ordinance was, we don't want 5G in our community, and vote no. So we got reports from city council that they were flooded with calls the day that this was going to be voted on. And so we went to the city council meeting that night. I'd never attended a city council meeting before this time. And we're hearing the city council people speak, and each one of them would say, well, we got so many calls today. I got 5 calls and I got 10 emails. And then the next person would say, oh, I got 3 calls and I got 15 emails. And to them, that was flooded with calls, which was frankly kind of shocking, because I think flooded with calls, you got to get hundreds of people to do something about it. And the point of it was, it was really not that many in terms of numbers, but it all happened on the same day. And it was the day of the vote. And so kind of like what Zoe and her team has done when they send out these Take Action Tuesday alerts, and all of a sudden you've got maybe not that many people, but enough people to make a difference, it brings the attention of the local elected representatives to something, and they realize that the community actually is concerned. All right, other hot buttons. So try to establish contact with a local radio station, a local TV station, a local newspaper. And once you get a bite with one of those things, you use it to leverage for another meeting or another newspaper report. So we got lucky and we secured an interview with NPR locally. And so then we were able to say to the next person, well, you know, we were on NPR 2 days ago. Here's the link to the podcast, and this is what's going on, and use it to sort of catapult into the next goal, whatever that may be. So as I said previously, I know it can be totally overwhelming. It's still overwhelming, but you can't be intimidated by it. You just have to get started. And the other thing that happened, if you do start a Facebook group, if you ask in your initial questions for the members, does anybody have any marketing expertise? Does anybody have any legal expertise? Because if you do have the benefit of working with a lawyer, we did have somebody that was interested that has a legal background, and he was hugely helpful in lending us credibility and sort of helping craft an ordinance locally to try and protect the residential community. I think what is the takeaway from all this, we did a good job on raising awareness locally to the issues surrounding 5G. That said, we were not pleased with the final outcome of the ordinance that was passed for Jacksonville, but neither was Verizon. So nobody really won. Right now, the telecoms unfortunately seem to have a lot of power as this goes, but it's grassroots efforts like what we're doing in this collective action network that I think are going to make a difference. So our group now, you know, continues to try to figure out what our next steps are going to be, because we're certainly not done. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Raymer. That was really very useful, kind of going through all of the different, you know, media outlets that you need to touch base with and things like that. I think that will be very useful for people. And we will have them get in touch with you after this if they live nearby to kind of help you with your efforts if they're interested. And then last but certainly not least, Miss Cece Doucette from Massachusetts. We're coming up back north. Cece, are you there?
I am. Thank you guys so much for pulling this together. We are just so thrilled. We have hundreds of people on this call tonight. So bravo to everybody who took the time out of their busy days at the end of a long day. Thank you so much for being with us. So I'll just try to summarize how I fell down the rabbit hole with this issue, maybe some lessons I learned along the way that others can benefit from, and just give hope, because this is a new day. And as one of our other speakers said, you guys are joining the conversation at a great time. So I fell down the rabbit hole with this about 7 or 8 years ago, after I had spent many years doing fundraising for our schools, because we kept hearing about this 21st century classroom and how our kids were going to need all this new technology. So I managed to get wireless infrastructure in the schools, iPads, Chromebooks, and, you know, Apple TVs, minis, all this stuff we thought our kids needed. And then God bless my girlfriend Wendy at book group one night. She was reading a book called Zapped and started talking about how wireless could be harmful. So I made a mental note of it, but then I read something not long after that came across my desk, and I went, wow, if there's any harm, I want to know, because I brought this into our schools for years. And so I started investigating. And if you do a simple Google search, is Wi-Fi safe, you will find studies that were done, but under conditions to show no harm. But once you get past that cursory glance, literally, I think everybody on this call knows there are thousands of peer-reviewed studies. So I started sharing things with my schools. And like the French National Library took wireless out in 2008 because of the health risks. Pockets of Israel and Belgium and Italy were taking wireless out of the schools. So I'm passing this back and forth to our schools, thinking that just like if we had a gas leak in the science lab, they would have evacuated the building and taken care of it. But I got back crickets. So this went on in our district. We finally had it put on school committee agenda. And it wasn't until they read the legal fine print that they took action. And we became the first public school district in the United States to have this little sign hanging in our classrooms. Turn off the devices when not in use, turn off the wireless when not in use, and never put a device on your body that's active, because that legal fine print tells us that. If anybody has an iPhone, just make a mental note that from settings, you go to general and then scroll all the way down to legal and regulatory. And at the bottom of that little list, once you hit legal and regulatory, you will see the disclaimer that says, keep this device at a distance from your body, or you may exceed the FCC limits for public radiation exposure, and use a hands-free option, because they don't tell us outright that that one device now has 5 or 6 separate antennas, a cellular, a data, a Wi-Fi, a locator, Bluetooth, a hotspot, constantly pulsing microwave radiation for a handshake with the nearest cell tower or router. So that legal fine print is what got my schools moving, but they didn't actually turn off the wireless. So then I went and I met with my state senator, and I went in district for her local coffee hours, and I set up an appointment, and I brought the science. I brought Ashland's little sign, and then I also brought a device that measures radio frequency. This is an acoustimeter. There may be some more advanced ones like the Safe and Sound Pro 2 today, where the technology's just evolved, but this is a fine meter. I measured my senator's cell phone. I measured her district director's laptop, and both devices went right off the charts. So here in my home, because I do my best to keep radiation out, it stays pretty low unless somebody comes in with their cell phone on. So my senators look at me like, really? And I said, yes. And I've taken it as far as I can in my town. Is there anything you can think of that we can give the public the right to know? So she put me with a lawyer in her office, and we whittled out a very simple bill in 2014 that was introduced at the beginning of the session in 2015. And people would say, Cece, don't get your hopes up. You know, bills in Massachusetts never go anywhere the first time they're introduced. And if it comes in under constituent request, good luck to you, because that's a red flag that they don't have to pay attention. But I was like, you know, it's better than what we had 5 minutes ago, and I can't think of anything else to do because I've taken it up the chain of command through my town. So on this journey, I have just been so privileged to have connected with so many of the experts that the rest of the speakers have been speaking about. And when my bill came up for public hearing, I reached out. I created a template with all the right legislators for the committees on it. And I said, could you please send in a statement of support? And by then I had started meeting people in Massachusetts, because I thought I was the only one figuring this out. And then down at the State House, I met a whole bunch of other people from all over the state. So definitely getting people together to talk about this is a really good way to start. So this session, we have House. I met a whole bunch of other people from all over the state. So definitely getting people together to talk about this is a really good way to start. So this session, we have 20 bills in Massachusetts, but the smart meter bill has been on the books for 8 years. But for the first time in 8 years, the Joint Committee on Telecom, Utilities, and Energy has reported it out favorably. So don't give up hope. Where it'll go next, we'll see. We have another excellent bill to form a commission and get the right minds at the table. And so we're still plugging away at the legislative level. But my lesson learned was don't go it alone. As everybody else has said, pluck up your courage and start talking this up with your friends, with your loved ones, with your colleagues, and start forming coalitions, because today we have so much information you can so easily share. That 5G crisis toolkit is such a go-to place, the Environmental Health Trust. And I've had the privilege of building a nonprofit with partners out of Europe, where we have built training already. Hang on. We built a little nonprofit called wirelesseducation.org. We've literally distilled this all into half-hour courses. So once we tip into mainstream, we can train an entire school, an entire town, an entire workforce with these little half-hour courses. So you may want to go take this little course. It will make you feel empowered that you don't have to sell this to anybody, right? Here's a very concise way to learn. And the training is there. So we always want to present solutions when we raise a problem. And we just have so much that's available today. At the community level, again, our schools became the first in the nation to hang up that sign. I went after a grant. It took me 3 tries, but I went after a grant in my community, and I got one of these meters on loan, and then I presented to the library, and they accepted it. And now we put a radiation detection meter in our library. And once we open our libraries again, people have been taking that out a week at a time. When you get it, you share it with everybody you know. I met a doctor out at the EMF conference in Santa Cruz last September, and she's from Massachusetts. So we hooked up when she got back. We did a grant with our local cultural council, got another one of these meters for her library. So that's a great way to go about it. So showing the fine print really brings it home to people. When you show it's right there in their device and nobody ever knew it was there. Having a meter is critical because it's invisible and who would ever know it's there, kind of like carbon monoxide, until your body starts feeling the effects. So show it to people, right? Use these terrific resources. And Generation Zapped is such a great tool, and I love that. We've done screenings all over Massachusetts, up in New Hampshire, down in Rhode Island. We've done screenings at our State House, down at the National Institutes of Health. And that was cut in 2017. And now we can say, and since then, in 2018, the US National Toxicology Program, which is the world's premier toxics researcher, concluded clear evidence of cancer and DNA damage. And then the Ramazzini Institute did the same on the heels of our study. So we have everything we need. We just need for us and our friends and our loved ones to get together and start educating, and don't expect anybody's going to take care of this for you. I thought I would just raise my little hand and say, hey, I think there's a problem and it's really bad for kids. And they would take the ball and run with it. But that has so not been what's happened. So you have the opportunity to carry this all the way through until you get change. And as the others said, don't give up. They don't know. It's our job to empower our public servants. And that means showing up in numbers. And then they're not public leaders necessarily, they're public servants. So if we don't make that voice, they'll go take care of other high priorities that they have because their plates are too full. None of us ever saw this issue coming, and we're all doing it on borrowed time. So we get that, but still, once you know, you can't unknow this. So it's up to you and I to just do everything in our power and keep growing the group. If I have a minute, I'd like to share the story behind that amazing New Hampshire bill. We did a screening of Generation Zapped at a charter school here in Massachusetts. This amazing woman, Deb Hodgson, came down from New Hampshire to join that screening and see what it was about. She brought me up. I did a screening at the Stratum Library, and shortly after that, her state rep came knocking on her door, literally, to ask to be reelected. She invited him in. She shared her story about she was on her deathbed. None of the specialists could figure it out. She was electrically sensitive. Once she figured it out, she remediated and regained her health. She taught this to her state legislator, and he listened. And he, being an engineer, this went up against everything he'd ever been taught. So he did the deep dive and had this major wow moment, like, wow, what have we done? He starts writing a bill. She introduces him to me. I look at his bill, make some suggestions. They jump in his car from New Hampshire, drive down to my kitchen table in Little Ashland, Massachusetts, and I get to spend the afternoon educating him and helping him to connect the dots. He then went and beefed up that bill, which we got passed in 7 months' time, from introduction to passage at the House level with the House Committee on Science, Technology, and Energy. These guys knew nothing, but we got to go in and educate. And then it went to the Senate side, where it went to Health and Human Services, and the chair of that is a medical doctor. He had co-sponsored that bill. One of the sponsors was a Republican, one was a Democrat. They worked together. They got that bill past the House, the Senate, and then Governor Sununu signed it into law. So now New Hampshire is the first in the nation to do this groundbreaking investigation into the health and environmental impacts of 5G and all EMFs. So we love what they're doing. They've been bringing in all of the right experts, the real scientists, the real doctors, and they have a seat at the table for industry, because we all need to be working on this together. So don't think that you can't do it. It's terrifying as it might be. We know how to do this. And with every step, bring solutions. You know, I carry around an Ethernet cable in my briefcase. I carry around a little adapter for an iPod or an iPad. or, you know, a cell phone, to show them this isn't rocket science. We just haven't been given balanced information. And it's so easy to fix. Just hardwire everything to the premises, as the industry was supposed to bring those connections to the premises. Hardwired inside, you have perfectly safe, fast, reliable, sustainable, and energy efficient technology. So we have all that information. We are this week going to be launching a website called Massachusetts for Safe Technology. And there are so many people who have pitched in to do the work in our communities. And now we're starting to unite in Massachusetts, and we'll be putting up information on what all of our towns are doing and a contact point so people can find us. And another volunteer who's fine with doing social media, she just set up Facebook pages for us. We've got a page and a group. So Massachusetts for Safe Technology is going to be our website, and I will send out an announcement at that. But anybody's welcome to go look it up now. It's there. We're still polishing, so excuse us while we get it right. But so yeah, jump in with both feet. Go with an open heart. Don't go in and freak people out, because once you get the fear factor going, the amygdala, our brain goes into survival mode. We're going to go into fight, flight, or freeze, and that's no way to convey information. So go in with an open heart. Be prepared. Be fact-based. And just say, hey, we're all in this together. Let's see what we can do, see where we are, do the gap analysis to where we need to be, and then come up with a plan. It's not rocket science, and we're so inspired by all the towns across our country and our world who are finally waking up and doing something. So everybody's joining this at a terrific point in time. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Cece, for those inspiring anecdotes. That's really, you have some great stories, really great stories, and we're looking forward to Massachusetts for Safe Technology and that website to be up and running and beautiful. All right, so we are a little bit over time in our featured speakers. So it might make most sense if you do have questions that you would like answered, specific questions, feel free to email me or any of the featured speakers. I'm actually going to put up their email addresses in a minute. But my email address is report@5gcrisis.com. And again, you'll see that in a second. So if you have additional questions that that were not addressed in the speeches that were given, please shoot me an email, and I'm happy to forward those to the right individuals or try and answer them myself. So
Zoe, we had a question early on.
Oh yeah, okay.
When Julie was speaking, we had a question from somebody who said, "Can you talk about the symptoms of microwave sickness?" So Julie, can you just give us a couple of minutes about that? I think that might be helpful for people.
So somebody did post up on the chat box the We Are the Evidence link, and honestly, Daphne does do an excellent job on symptoms. So since I think that when you do the recording, there will also be a link to the chat box. It's good to hold on to that, because there's a lot of good information coming out in the chat in response to people's questions. But, some of the initial symptoms are, tinnitus, like tingling, like you might feel a warmth or tingling or a headache around where you have your phone. Another thing is like, headaches. I've myself lost a lot of hearing, and I've had vision problems. Another thing is nervousness, irritability, sleep disturbances are super common. And then we move into even more dramatic, kinds of symptoms where we start going into the immune disorders, early dementia, and then of course, cancers, evidence of 7 types of cancer, and clear evidence of the cancer shawarma or whatever it's called that's in these are mostly nervous system related cancers related to organs, but where the nerves meet the organs because of the fact that the cell phone use does tend to, really upset our nervous system. And so anyone wants to add to that, that's great, but that's mine.
One of the things that we've noticed so often is it seems to be the smart meter, more than anything else. It seems to be the smart meter that triggers, that sudden realization that something's not right. And
what did it for me, actually?
Yeah, we know a lot of people for whom the smart meter more than the the nearby cell tower has been the problem. But of course, now we've got the cell towers moving into close proximity to people's houses. So it's going to be, like having a giant smart meter out in your front yard. And so I don't know. I thought this has been really inspiring. A lot of great comments, as you said in the chat room. Hold on, I'm looking at a question here, but so many people are chatting. The confusion of how many 5G studies there are out there. Can you clarify? Okay, so I'm happy to open the floor. My understanding is we don't have a whole lot of studies on 5G in particular, but I want to make it really clear that 5G doesn't operate all by itself. It operates in conjunction with 4G, and we do have an awful lot of studies there. So when somebody says 5G is not a problem, I think you need to remind them that 5G always comes with 4G. There is no 5G all by itself. So when some smart engineer says, oh, well, the 5G is only going to be, a focused beam only on demand, so it's really not a problem. You have to remind them that it comes with a 4G transmitter as well. And those are on all the time, and they're constantly emitting in every direction and, shaking hands and running. The other thing, there's a lot of questions on the chat that are technical questions, and I want to say that this is not a technical panel. I can see that there's a real need, and we will put together a technical panel. So all you people who are asking the super technical questions, we'll have people who will be able to answer those. I can tell that's a burning question. What we wanted to do tonight was to introduce you to some of the people who have been making a difference in their communities, and more than anything else, show you that ordinary people can make a tremendous difference here. People who didn't previously have, a particular history in politics or government relations. I love what Pasca said. She's never even been to a town meeting before. And here she is, and she got Easton to pass that. That was just so great. I mean, persistence, determination, and flexibility. What's the other key word that came out of our informal discussion was the other night. It's, if this doesn't work, try this. That doesn't work, you go over here and try that. You talk to this guy, he's an idiot, he doesn't want to hear you. Go talk to one of the other people on the council. Just, you just can't give up. You just got to keep trying and see what works. There were questions about the slide presentations, and I think we can make those available as part of the package. For some reason, we were not able to get the Facebook feed running tonight, so we will take the recording from this and post it on Facebook so that all the people that missed it will be able to see that. Zoe, I'm going to hand it back to you.
All righty. Thank you. Thank you, Doug. Yeah, so again, if you have questions that were not addressed during this event, feel free to send me an email, and I'm happy to forward those to the appropriate individuals and try and answer them to the best of my ability. So I just, in closing, because it is we're running a little bit behind, but it was just really fascinating to hear everyone's kind of association with the 5G issue and how they became involved in it. And so thank you so much to our speakers and to the hundreds of you who joined this meeting this evening. And we hope you've been inspired and are ready to take action in your community in regards to 5G. So as I said earlier, the telecoms are very, very busy right now. They're very busy deploying 5G wireless antennas near our homes and schools all across this country. So the time to act is now. The fight is not in a year. It's not in 2 years. By then it will all be over. The die will have been cast. So the time to act is right now. And so if each of you who are on the call this evening was to create a local 5G action Facebook page, or send your legislators a copy of one of our resolutions, or write a letter to the editor in your local newspaper about 5G risks, our grassroots 5G awareness movement would grow many, many times more powerful. Stay connected with us, please. Here's my email, report@5gcrisis.com. Give me a buzz. I'm always on the phone. We have great chats. It's a lot of fun. We exchange a lot of strategies, and we brainstorm ways you can kind of circumvent various issues that might arise in your community pertaining to 5G. And every community is different, so we have nice talks. Facebook. Americans for Responsible Technology. Instagram, Americans for Responsible Tech. Twitter, we have one of those. I'm still figuring out how to use it myself, so that's that. And then stay connected with tonight's speakers. So I would argue this is probably the most important thing up here. So I'm going to leave this up for a minute. Okay, so Julie, who you heard first, you can reach her there. Pam from Safe Tech Forward, Janine, Pasca, Jason, and Raymer. So Jason is in St. Petersburg, Florida, and Raymer's in Jacksonville. So whoever you live closest to, please be in touch. And then Cece from Massachusetts. And then find or start our local 5G action group. You can do that through our website. So here are the two links to that. So 5gcrisis.com, join a group, and then start a group. We have some nice materials on there. And then the toolkit. So you have PDFs available to you for free. You just download, print, email, whatever you have to do. We have, documents about lobbying, sample legislative codes, like we said. So you can access that toolkit and peruse it using this link here. And don't hesitate to reach out, as I've said about 7 times before, or any of the speakers you heard from this evening. We're really, truly here to support you in any way we can. We'd love to hear from you about other events you'd like us to host in the future as well. So your input is very much valued, and we'd love to hear from you. I have so enjoyed, on a personal note, I have so enjoyed working with so many of you on this very serious and rapidly evolving public health issue. And in my heart, I know if we work together, we can successfully protect our communities from 5G. The telecoms, they might have the money, but we have the science. We have the science, and in the end, we will win. And with that, good night, everybody. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thanks again for joining us. And this has been wonderful. Yay.